Good afternoon. This is Carol Kennedy with ApplicantStack. We thank you for joining our Ask Me Anything session for today. We do have some folks still dialing in, so we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes and then we'll go ahead and start the presentation. So we'll be right back. Okay, we are just a couple of minutes past. Thanks again, everyone, for joining today. We hope everyone is able to hear us and see my screen. You should be able to, but we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks, everyone, again, for joining today. Today we have myself, Carol Kennedy, Account Manager with ApplicantStack, and also Ellen Benzine. And we do have my colleague Alan on the line as well. Either Ellen or Ellen will be helping with questions today. Our topic for today is reference checks. So we'll be going over why reference checks are important, how to set up reference check questionnaires in the ApplicantStack system, and also we'll be going into how to complete those. So we can either call our references or we can go ahead and automate that out of the ApplicantStack system. As far as resources for you, we've got a quick link that will be going into the chat from our partner Indeed about when to check references, why to check references, just a lot of really good reference material surrounding that. So again, that will be going into the chat. And then once we've gone through our PowerPoint today, taking you through the system just a little bit, we will open up the floor for questions. Those are going to be questions surrounding anything ApplicantStack. So recruit, onboard, it doesn't have to be specific to the topic for today. And we will do our best to answer those for you. So why do we want to conduct reference checks? It's going to help you choose the right hire. So you'll be seeking outside input about a candidate. To this point, you've really just been seeing the information that the candidate has provided, references, interviews, and so forth. And that's also going to give you an opportunity to verify the information provided by the candidate. You can learn more about the candidate. So same idea, same train of thought. So far, we've seen the resume. We've gone perhaps through an interview with that candidate. So this is really going to allow you to go beyond that resume and dig into what the candidate might add to your organization as far as company or culture. Maybe a little bit more about their soft skills, their communication skills, ability to collaborate with others, and also maybe strengths and weaknesses of that candidate, areas for development, things of that sort. Hiring mistakes are expensive, so we want to make sure we get it right as far as advertising, fees, time the staff has spent reviewing resumes, interviewing, cost of training, reduced productivity, and so forth. So anything we can do to make sure we're hiring the right individual is really going to help us out. As far as setting those up in ApplicantStack, we'll be sure to bring you into the system, but one of the steps would be setting up a reference check questionnaire. You can set up a template in your library that is going to ensure consistency in your processes. So as far as HR and recruiting, consistency is pretty important, making sure that you're comparing apples to apples, treating candidates the same, and so forth. And that's also going to ensure compliance. You'll have a set list of questions for your staff to ask of references as you're going through that process. As far as an idea of sample questions that you might ask, you may want to ask, what is your relationship to the candidate? How long have you known that individual? Would you work with that individual again if you were given the opportunity? What are their strengths, areas for development, perhaps? You can go into their work history just to make sure it matches up with what they said their responsibilities were. Did they effectively meet deadlines, and so forth? So as we had mentioned, you can either call your reference, you can open up that form in the system and complete it as you're speaking with them, or we have a way to automate that in the system so it will go out to the reference via email and maybe save yourself some time trying to coordinate times to speak with your references and so forth. I know back when I was doing reference checks, that was always tricky. You could call the reference, they're on the other line, they call you back, you're on the other line. So perhaps you want to consider automating that and hopefully saving yourself some time. Okay, as far as automating an ApplicantStack, I did include a link here that should be going into the chat. We have an article that's going to walk you through this. So there's a few steps involved. You've got that reference article to go back to, so don't feel like you need to necessarily write this down or get everything in order. That will be available for you to reference back to. But the first thing you'll want to do is gather that reference information in ApplicantStack that is included on the standard employment application. I'll be sure to show you where that's located. We need to have the reference information before we can do anything else in the system. So that is step one. Step two is composing your reference check questionnaire. Step three is composing an email template and inserting a merge code for that into the email body. So that will give a link to the reference to complete that form. And then we need to designate how and when we want that to be triggered. So we will go into add action on the employment application to set that up. And we'll be sure to show you where that is in the system. But again, this guide here should walk you through that process. It should have some screenshots, as we can see here, to really help you set that up. Before we hop over, we'd like to mention our upcoming events. We do have on October 15th a recruit webinar, so we will be covering this topic, applicant scoring, as well as doing an overall overview of our recruit system. And then on October 29th, we have an Ask Me Anything regarding seasonal hiring, and our partner Verified First should be there as well. We've got a quick registration for you here, or in the ApplicantStack system. In the upper left corner, we have an announcement section. You should be able to register for those as well via that announcement section. Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and hop into the system and show you what we just talked about. And then we'll be sure to open up the floor for questions. So everyone should be able to see my ApplicantStack demo. I'm on the home page. So let's talk first about that reference check questionnaire. If we come into our library is where everything is housed that you think you might use again. We can go ahead and come into questionnaires, and I do have a sample reference check form already set up. If you don't have anything in your system, you can simply click on New Questionnaire and create a new one. But let's go ahead and hop into my reference check form. We're going to View Details. And then you can see the questions that I have set up. Again, yours don't need to match this. It can be, whatever your process is. But I would perhaps jot down the name of the reference, who I spoke to, what attempts at contact were made. So if I was trying to call them, maybe I tried on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I could just keep track of that. And we have some questions with multi-line text boxes open up. So I could simply speak with the reference, populate that information, and save that. And that is going to track in the candidate's profile. So that is assuming we're speaking with our reference. We'll go into automating in just a minute. From here, if you have something already in the works, again, we can either create a new one from scratch, or if you already have something, you can edit, you can add questions if you think of some additional questions that you would like to ask. So let's go back into our candidate view. And let's go to the feedback tab for that candidate. So we can see we have some notes in here. We have a phone screen form. We've got some interview notes that have happened. At this point, we can go ahead and submit a questionnaire. Choose that reference check form. Let's say we're calling our reference. We can go ahead and populate that, submit that, and that will track with the candidate's history. Okay, now that we talked about that scenario, let's talk about automating that a little bit, saving yourself some time. In the library, let's go to our employment application. So this is where we are initially gathering that information. And I just need to scroll down just a little bit. Here are our references. So we're asking for name, relationship, perhaps it's a professional working relationship, perhaps it's an acquaintance, coworker, supervisor, things of that nature. Where can we reach them? Phone number, email address. So we want to make sure that we are gathering that on our employment application. And the candidate has an option to add a reference. If they have multiples, they can go ahead and add more. Okay, from there, we talked about the reference check questionnaire that is in place. So that's great. If you don't have one, again, feel free to go ahead and create one via new questionnaire. And then the next step, how do we actually get that out to our reference for completion? So what we need to do is go to the library, come to messages, and I have a quick reference check communication set up. Let's go ahead and edit that and show you a few things. More than likely, you'll want to change this communication here. So I have it really basic. So-and-so has provided you as a reference. We would love it if you would go ahead and complete this form for us with some further information. So you'll want to go ahead, build that communication out, and then under Insert Merge Codes is where we are pulling in that reference check. It's a questionnaire. And let's go ahead and find it. Here is that reference check form. So that has been added. That will give them a link to go ahead and complete those questions, that information that we're really looking for and digging into. So you'll want to go ahead and make sure you save that communication. That is our next step. And then our final step. When do we actually trigger that to happen? So we'll come back into the employment application. Under questionnaires, here is our application for employment. We're going to view details. And I've already added it. Typically this would say add action, but because I've already added it to the system, we need to edit action at this point. From there, you'll want to designate who is that going to. So we want it to go to recipient name, reference 1, name, recipient email, same, reference 1, email. Message template, we want the reference check message to go out. We can add a row. So we'll pull reference 2, name, reference 2, email, message template, reference check. Same idea. Just to build that out with however many that we have. Then you'll want to designate when do you want that email to go out. We've got some quick instructions here to remind you. So choose immediately to email the recipient as soon as the questionnaire is submitted. So as soon as that employment application is submitted, if you choose immediately, it's going to kick out that communication for them to complete their references. And I believe in that article from Indeed that I had referenced, typically you would wait until a little bit later in your process, maybe after an interview, you know you're truly interested in that candidate. In that case, we can go ahead and do it on a stage change. So we can see here, it will wait to send the email until the candidate reaches that stage of the workflow. That is defined in the workflow configuration. We'll go into that in just a second. But in that case, they will have to hit that stage before that communication goes out. So typically, you don't want to be checking references or applying for multiple jobs. We don't want to inundate our references with requests. So maybe wait until you've narrowed down your pool just a little bit. You know you're truly interested. They may not want their current employer to know they're looking. So maybe wait until a little bit later in the process. And let's go ahead and go into our workflow. So this is something your account administrator can do. Let's go to Setup. Let's go to Configure. Our application workflow. We will go in to edit that. And I will come down to the reference check stage, since that's the stage we're interested in. Once the candidate hits reference check, this is what's going to happen. And we can see here is that reference check email. Okay, so 2 ways to accomplish reference checks. You can either create that form, populate it, call your reference, type it in as you're speaking with them, or there's that automation process. It takes a few steps, but once you've got that set up, that should really streamline that for you. And again, that support article is going to walk you through all of those steps. I know that was a few things to remember, but that's going to help you go through that process. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. Again, it can be anything ApplicantStack. We do ask that you keep it sort of general enough to go ahead and benefit the group as a whole. And we will do our best to answer those questions. So I'm not sure, Ellen, if you were able to get in, but Ellen or
I'm
Ellen?
here. Can you hear me?
You are. I can hear you just fine.
All right. I was having some technical difficulties, but all is good now. Excellent explanation on that automating of reference checks.
Thank you.
It is a multi-step process. So we're here to help if you need some assistance in setting that up. Submit a ticket like we always say, and somebody from technical support will be able to assist you with that.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with some questions. Some are coming through. If you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and submit them, as Carol said. It doesn't have to be on reference checks. It can be on anything ApplicantStack, Recruit, and onboarding. All right. So the first question, Carol, is in Recruit. Is it best to sponsor jobs on Indeed from ApplicantStack or post directly on Indeed?
Yeah, great question. Typically, we would recommend doing that through ApplicantStack. Reason being, if you post through ApplicantStack, candidates are going to come back into ApplicantStack and everything is in one place for you. And if you go outside of ApplicantStack, if you go to Indeed directly, you're going to lose that. So we would really encourage you to push everything into one system so you can best organize yourself and manage that.
Excellent. Next question. Can you show again how to manually enter reference notes?
Sure thing, I'd be happy to. So coming back to George Blake, he is our sort of test candidate in this situation. We will come over to feedback. Let me speak to this just a little bit. So answers would be anything your candidate answered coming into the system. Feedback is more feedback provided by your team. So that's why we're on the feedback tab. And we can simply submit questionnaire. We'll select that reference check, and then we can simply type in as we're speaking with a reference, maybe give them some feedback, rating, quick little visual star system, and then we can submit that. And that will go ahead and track that here on the feedback with the candidate. So if you ever need to go back to that, or let's say I did a reference check yesterday, I'm out of the office today or tomorrow, somebody needs to look at that, that will be available for them to come back to.
Excellent. And what's so great about that is the notes are obviously being tracked in ApplicantStack. So those that are interested in seeing those feedback notes have the ability to do so all in one place.
Yep.
All right, next question. Is there a way to merge duplicate profiles while keeping all the history notes?
Okay, we do hear this question from time to time. We unfortunately don't have a way to quote unquote merge candidate profiles. But what will happen is if there is a candidate in the system more than once, there will be a red alert that is displayed with those profiles. I'm not sure if I can find an example easily in this account, but you'll be able to hover over that. You can see what other jobs that candidate has applied to. So I'll take just a second. Here we go. We have a duplicate for Ken. We can see here the other jobs that Ken has applied to, what stage he's in. We can also double click on that to get a little bit more information.
And Carol, while we're on this topic, do you mind sharing a bit of the functionality of global notes?
Not at all.
Which kind of goes hand in hand, yeah, with duplicate candidates. This is for Jessica. Might be helpful.
Sure thing, Jessica. So under Ken's profile, if we add a note, we can enter a quick note, we can make that private, or we can check this box to make it global so it shows across all applications for that candidate. So sometimes we get questions about this one candidate keeps applying to each and every job that we have. We're really not interested in them. You can put a note in there, make that global, and then that will show across all applications. So if somebody else is looking at that candidate, they'll know that perhaps we're not interested in that individual. But any situation, obviously, is relevant to that.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great way to spend all duplicates for an individual by entering that global note, Jessica. Hope that helps a bit. Next question. Oh, we got a thank you from Jessica.
Okay.
That's for you, Carol. Okay. If I add onboarding to my account, does the cost of texting increase?
No. So texting spans both recruit and onboard. So depending if you have basic texting or premium texting, the cost between those two is different because premium texting has more services. But no, it will automatically come over to recruit and or onboard for texting, and there's not a price increase simply by adding it to or adding another product. It's going to automatically carry over for you. It does span both products.
Which is a bargain. And it's unlimited texting too. So you don't have to track how many texts any of your users have sent. And again, I'm always a big proponent of this audit trail. All texts are captured within ApplicantStack, so all users would be able to see that correspondence as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Next question, Carol, is we're evaluating tax forms for the new year. What federal tax forms are available?
Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to hop over to onboard. And our team does update these if any changes happen typically towards the end of the year. Those updates will happen. You'll simply want to click on Import Form. You can take a peek at those federal forms. So we have the 2024 W-4. If there's any updated state tax forms, those will be indicated as such. So it looks like perhaps these states had an update in 2024. So you'll simply want to check the box for those, import those, and then you'll want to make sure your checklists are updated with those appropriate forms. So if the North Carolina tax form has changed, we want to go ahead and take the old one off and then add the new one back in. So I don't have that obviously, but we'll use the federal W-4 as an example. You'll simply want to swap that out so the appropriate one is attached to your checklist.
Excellent, thank you. And you know what? That I-9 in the forms area of the onboarding library, it's good until 2027, I believe. Carol, there's a date on it. So just to make everybody aware, actually, you might not have the most recent one in your demo account.
Yeah. It looks like I
but
do
the
not.
one, but the one that is available for use is good until, I want to say, 2027.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep. All right. Next question. Is there a way to add a question to the application that will reduce applications from coming through if they are not eligible to work in the
I'm assuming in the US. So let's go back to our recruit system, and you could add that to the employment application. Our technical support team can help with minor modifications. So via this orange question mark in the upper right, you would simply ask a question and just ask our team, I'd like to add a question to the employment application, let them know what exactly it needs to say and where exactly it needs to go. The other option, you could add that to a separate questionnaire, a pre-screening question. Let's look at general questions. So maybe, are you authorized to work in the US for any employer? Yes or no. And from there, we can do a little bit more. We can do some scoring. So we can indicate if they answer that question no, that can be a KO or a knockout. And if they answer it yes, we can give them some point values. And then when we come back to our candidate screen, we can see KO. Maybe they answered that question not the way we needed them to. So that would indicate that. And perhaps if you see a score, they answered that question favorably. So that might help you narrow down. And then if we come into that candidate with that KO, we can see what question it was specifically. So it's going to be highlighted for us. So in this case, if they said no to this question, it would show KO here in pink.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca, there is not a way to stop a candidate from applying, but there is a way to, as Carol showed with the red KO square, show on your candidate table that they're not qualified for the opportunity based on how you have scored and whether or not you've made any of those questions a knockout. And that's intentional because if Mark, who is KO'd from this opportunity, maybe Mark's going to be a candidate for another opportunity. So it's a bit of a way to grow your candidate database. But again, that KO square just screams at you. So you'll know if a candidate is not qualified for the job based on how you score and knockout questions.
Exactly.
So
Thank you, Dawn.
Yep. Hope that was helpful. Next question. Okay, we got a thank you from Rebecca, Carol. Next question, does ApplicantStack integrate with Office 365?
Okay. Short answer is yes. So we have your account administrator under setup to integrations to Office 365. There are a couple things that need to happen. We can click learn more. I believe you need a tenant ID to set that up. And here is that right here, tenant ID. So we've got a support article right here. What that is going to do is allow you, let's say we're scheduling an interview with a candidate. We're going to add an event. And I don't believe it's set up in my account any longer, but we can go ahead and check available times for our team. Looks like I've been pretty busy today, but we can go ahead and that will change based on when you get it synced up correctly. You'll see when your team is available and when they're not available. And that is what that allows you to do. So let me walk you through that one more time. Let's go to our setup. It's under integrations, Office 365. We can either edit those settings or learn more.
Great. And I can remember when I was recruiting, having to look at the interview team calendars outside of my applicant tracking system. But if you integrate with Office 365, as Carol mentioned, or really Google Calendar, you have the ability to view those calendars of your interview team and then schedule an event accordingly.
Yeah, so you have to go into Outlook separately, type in the names, check their availability, and look for a time that kind of works for everybody. So that should save you some time in that administrative process.
Excellent. Okay. Another question, Carol, is how do I add a location to the location field and show that on my job board.
Okay, so let's show everyone what we're talking about. So on our homepage, I'm going to come to Open Job Board, and we want to see location here is the question that I'm hearing. So let's go back
Yes.
into our system. When we go to create a job, and I'll show you how to set this up in just a second, but let's come into Accounting Manager. We can see location is here. You would be prompted to complete that as you are creating that job. Let me go ahead and edit that job. Here's that location. You can have that be a drop down or a free text that you just type into. So how do we get that? That's the question. Your account administrator user can come to Setup, Configure, and Job Fields. From there, you'll just want to create a field. Call that location, city, state, whatever you feel like that appearing as. Is that a text? Is that a drop down? If it is a drop down, what are our options? One per line. You'll put those in. You can make that required or optional. And you ask how to show it on your job board. You'll simply select yes. Do we want to see it on our jobs table? So as we're reviewing our jobs, do we want to see location or not? Do we want to see that on the candidate table? So you'll go ahead and set that up, click save, and then that will populate. That will be available for you to populate as you're creating your job, editing your job, and so forth.
Great.
Okay.
Carol, will you do me a favor, please? And that is, can you open your job board and show how you've got filters on your job board?
Sure thing. So in setting those up, we now have the option. There's another setting that needs to be changed, but we can go ahead and I don't have it populated, but let's use department as an example. If our candidate wants to see jobs only in finance, they can go ahead and submit that, apply that filter. Now we're just seeing our finance jobs. So we can pretend a location has been populated, and same idea will apply. If we just want to see jobs in a certain city, we can pull those out.
Yeah, just makes it easier for candidates to find the jobs of which they are interested in, whether or not it's based on function like department or a geographic location. So
Exactly.
That's always a good thing to make the application process as efficient as possible. Next question, Carol, is how do we integrate with Track 1, and is there a fee for this?
Okay.
So back to the integrations page, please.
Exactly. Track 1, that's background check, correct? Yep.
Yep.
So background screening, Track 1, we can activate that. And so there's some information that you'll need to gather from Track 1. So company code, branch name, username, and so forth. So it looks like we need a little bit of information from Track 1. And as far as additional cost, there's not, since they're a partner of ours, we're integrated with them, there's not an additional cost from our side, but there will be additional cost to use Track 1's services, and we would need to defer to Track 1 on what those costs would look like for you. So any questions or any assistance needed in setting that up, we would encourage you to contact support via Ask a Question, and they'll be happy to help you set that up.
And there is a Help Center article on integrating with Track 1 too, Carol, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. And the beauty of integrating with any of our partners is that the information or the request for a background check can be triggered from the candidate record, and then the results of the background check can be housed in the candidate record. So again, create some efficiencies in that recruiting process. And I'm sharing this because as a recruiter, I had to re-input information in a different software application when I was triggering background checks. So will you click on integrations, please, Carol, from the blue menu?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had Ask Me Anything hours on integrations before, but any account administrator can view these integrations and see if any work for you or would be of benefit. Okay, questions are coming in, Carol. How do we open a job back to open once we have filled it?
Okay, so probably what will happen is once the job has been closed, right now I only see active jobs on my table. So we would need to find that job. Let's go to inactive using our filters. We would go ahead and probably what you could do is clone that job. That will open up a new one, and then you'll want to put that job into the open stage to get it to show back on your active jobs table. That's probably the best way to handle that. I'm
Mhm.
trying to think if you reopen the old one and reposted it. Typically, you would want a one-on-one relationship. So if you're tracking time to fill or things of that nature, you may want to start fresh with a new job. So maybe clone it, um, open up a new one, and then put it into the open stage once it's ready to go.
That's what I was thinking too, Carol.
Okay, great minds think alike.
I know. Carol and I have been working together for a long time. Um, all right. Now's the last chance to input questions. Looks like things have slowed down, Carol.
Okay,
Um,
while we're waiting
I'm
for these
not.
people, no more.
Yep.
We'll hop back over to the homepage. Here's that announcement section that we referenced. So I did want to show you. We've got a recruit webinar coming up. So we welcome you to register for that, and we should have another link coming soon for that additional Ask Me Anything in October. But we would love to see you in the future.
Yep. No more questions.
No more
And
questions?
I always like to promote Allie's blog too under resources.
Yes. Oh, it's right here.
There it is.
Right
Yep.
above resources. Yep. So we have some great information there. If we click on that, we've got both recruit and onboard. This has been a hot topic lately. So Allie does a great job of really looking at what's going on in the industry, and we've got some great information here. So we encourage you to go ahead and explore that.
All right. And I don't see any more questions coming in, Carol.
Okay. Well, we thank everyone for joining and for your time today. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and we hope everyone takes care. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye, everyone.